So that was kind of the key question.
Mm-hmm.
So are you ready?
Yeah, rolling.
Theater director Stephen Hill is being interviewed by me for the Art for Social Change research project with Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, British Columbia. He's sitting in my living room and he's tired. So, what do you think? Is there something that needs to be preserved, Steve?
Is that really how the questions start?
Well, it could be.
Holy. Well, I was thinking about this morning.
Maybe a good place to start, just to kind of contextualize your work. Do you think of yourself as an artist that works in the field of art for social change, or do you think of yourself as an artist that, or has been involved in projects or programs of work that could be seen like that, or do you have a response to that?
So I don't like the formation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like, for me the problem that I've encountered through the course, and we did quite a bit of work together around around some of this some time ago, and in fact we met that was the circumstance we met in. So the problem for me is the art for, and so that to me means that there's something that precedes the art, or is predetermined in some way. That it's the instrumentalizing the art that for me is problematic. I would hope that my practice is a political practice and see it that way. I've always seen it that way. Which then, but that's where my thinking is over the years has come. It got to be problematic around those questions, which then is what's the predetermined thing, and what is the frame. In some way, it's the frame that one carries in with one's into a practice. Stephen Hill is in the middle of opening a show. It is a theatricalized reading of Marie Clement's play, The Unnatural and Accidental Women, a performance that will in a few days prove problematic for the audience, for the student actors, and for himself. Doing a project with SFU students using Marie Clement's play, The Unnatural and Accidental Women, which was written in 2004 about a series of murders of Aboriginal women in the downtown East Side. This predates Picton. So doing this with, how am I getting here? Doing this with a group of non-Aboriginal students that have very little experience of that community or of those lives, and doing it down at Woodward's in the neighborhood. Woodward's is a contested site anyway, has been over the years. So. And I wanted to talk about that in terms of frames, but it may even be worthwhile, is putting the frame of the inquiry, and this goes back to what might be preserved, is putting the frame of the inquiry on fraught, challenging injustices of going to the place, bringing the frame of inquiry, bringing artistic practice, and putting the frame around these relations, these historical knots in some way, and sitting in contemplation of those things, and what clearly comes out of this is not that we're only bringing the frame there. There is no solution that we're going to offer. This is going to be bringing a frame there and sitting with that, and for all that comes out of that is like really challenging and difficult, But that, when you said responsibility, that's what I was thinking about.
Creating a performance in order to provoke and contemplate difficulty is asking us, maybe, to contemplate the framing of the work in a phenomenological light. Philosopher Edmund Husserl asks us to contemplate the idea of returning to the things or matters themselves, to letting things speak for themselves rather than being dictated to by theory, taking things as they present themselves or show themselves rather than constructing them in accordance with the demands of a system. So maybe just what occurred to me is like we met when working in
Applicana in 1942.
No, but as I recall, and it's related to just the statement that you met, is that we met working in some capacity in response to the AIDS crisis. Heidegger framed our understanding of being in the world as webs of significance. We experience ourselves as entities through these webs of significance and through engagement with others, making it possible for entities, ourselves, to show themselves to each other and be encountered. How the world or these webs of significance disclose themselves to us is in process. Right?
We met by some public health nurses brought us in to go underground into Surrey because they had forbidden AIDS education in the school system. And so they wanted artists to go in and create something on the sly to get education to students that were not being educated.
In the late 1980s, a fundamentalist Christian board of education banned sexual health education in Surrey, British Columbia. That decision endangered the health of adolescents, according to public health officials, putting them at risk of contracting HIV and AIDS, of which there was no known treatment at the time. So in thinking about that there was a form of social or educative engagement. So we were, to some extent, and I'm not trying to trick you here, I'm just trying to problematize it myself, is that we were in some ways engaged in a kind of a project that we had some responsibility for. Can you talk about the difference between, or can you speak to what the artist's role in this kind of engagement might be, as opposed to the teacher, the nurse, the social worker?
So for instance, in that example, and we did go out and do that work, and we held to the responsibility that we saw. But in some way it's the predetermined thing that I always seem to have trouble with. That in an artistic process, yes, you come with a frame, but inside of the process, if you're actually giving over to a process where you're coming with your ideas, but then the process itself might lead you to something, to an unimagined place. I think that for me that was a big shift in the practice somehow, in my practice. It was something about space and place, which came from the circus and in some ways the beginnings of the circus came out of a political practice of going, Oh, and and now it looks like naively romantic, of going, what would it be if we looked like we'd won? What would the territory look like if we had, instead of problematizing and pathologizing, what would that be? And then of course, then it's just again back to the old romantic notion of community. But in trying to create an ensemble, a diverse ensemble that was kind of celebratory and saying, and holding open space in a way, holding open space for people of varying backgrounds, cultures, abilities, all of that, right? Like a really diverse ensemble, and playing and bringing the notion of play there as a kind of a celebration, a political, and a political celebration somehow.
Borgman, 1992. Community celebration is goodwill on definite terms. In community celebration, the terms are defined by the reality being celebrated. They do not share everything, they share play.
I remember years ago working it was a project that had been supported by community engaged funding from, I don't know,
Community collaborations or something, probably Canada Council, right?
And we had taken a bunch of young people, and I believe we called them street
involved.
Street involved. So that was the
term.
Know
all the terms.
That was the term of the day. Street involved, and they were and at risk. And I was interviewed, and they came into, it was a big circus. There was the tent show that we did down the drive. And I was quite interested. I have to say, I did have an aesthetic interest in them, but the money came through the pathologizing of taking a certain group, and we were going to do good for this group. So I was interviewed along the way by, I don't know, the Sun or something like that. And a young woman that was in that pathologized group came so angry to me and said, "What are we at risk for? At risk?" And that rocked me, actually. Her question really rocked me. And yet inside of, and then you go in with these people. I mean, and that's where it turns for me also, is at some point, if you keep working with people, they become artists. They stop becoming the pathologized other, and they become artists. And then where are you at? Oh, well, then you got to find some new pathologized others. So great. Let's have more and more artists. But there's something about those frames that are about certain predetermined assumptions that we have. These frames, and I've been really thinking about frames lately because of the work that I've been doing that we can talk about you come in with a certain frame, and then the thing performs because of the frame you've put there. And you have to deal with that frame. But then is there a way that in the process, Rauschenberg, I saw a great thing of his, an interview with him once, and he talked about an artistic process and he was doing some paintings with chemical reactions. And he said that the process is half him and half mystery and God or something. And that he didn't, and it was really, and it would move over from half and half, like it would, that there's some process that you don't know. If it's going to be art, then it's some process of you could go practice as research or something also. But then the frame might actually shift on you.
Well, exactly.
And one would hope that it would, and that maybe that's the hope where I started to put more hope in art than I did in politics. Where politics comes predetermined, and then you get stiffer and stiffer as you go into opposition, this oppositional kind of tensions that then get become more firmly defined and more, as opposed to this thing that might have, that you don't know. You bring in these pieces into a space, bring in these questions and these histories into a space, and then hopefully, if art is doing it, you arrive at some place in Rauschenberg's thing that's not pre-imagined. And a great politic would be, let's bring artists in and just imagine together. I mean, but that's so, who's going to fund that?
Now I'm thinking about frames and open spaces, like through the lens of a camera, of what is held within our sight and what remains hidden. of what becomes encountered or revealed, of frames or webs of significance. And the question I asked Steve in the first place, what in your practice needs to be preserved or held as a responsibility as it's reimagined in the future? That looks great.
Okay, so this looks good. He's going to sit low in the chair because he's a bit groggy, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. It's Godardian self-reflexivity.
That's what it is, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna take the puppet out.